to an extent because it's like you would prefer to kill someone over doing a jail sentence, which means that you're even like, yeah, like, what's going to happen? You're going to be in prison for like 10 years. Like, I've signed up for someone for 10 years. You don't want 10 years. And you're still going to get those 10 years, but then you know you're still going to get executed for killing that person. And on top of that, that may only be for a few months. That shows you'll stand out supply. Because when you do something like that, think about that logically. There's going to be more cops, there's going to be more people who are, and you're going to be put in jail. You're going to be convicted very quick, and you're going to be killed. And there's an untold criminal business as well, another untold group. They won't just kill people who are rapists, city criminals. From time to time, they will do just as one for fiction. If you kill someone, you well out to cop, like you kill like someone that's really the gas problem with you though. Because most of these people understand that, you know, like young life kind of term. They don't go nice someone like that. Nice.
Have you ever had to kill a child? Have you ever had to kill a child?
That's not going to do it. Otherwise, I would do it out. But I have seen one of them out.
What happened?
Well, the first time I so, yeah. She about me and my first time, you know, big up, which is to this person. Run it back to another friend who was just to me, that's just part of it. I don't like it personally, that's the whole thing. Like, when I do this job, I leave my phone with but that's when I get that's what I think. That's what people do. I do it for my own sake. I do it to get these people. That is a fucking shit. That's what that is. So, at the time, we were talking about abandoned, sort of, and this person had a kid. When he was a kid, abandoned something. I think it was something. And those three stories, they had 4 occupants inside that house. Now, 2 of them were kids inside the house. Basically, they were shooting.
No way. No way.
In that process, that person had a lot of each other. I came to the house. I went to the campus was directly in another room behind me. I was there. I didn't know that. Now that person should well be slow.
No.
Me, but when he's straight to the wall, straight to the next wall, killed that kid. That's never occurred for the rest of the time. I saw another one directly what I did.
Just one moment. Just one moment. Hold on. I'm gonna hold you right there. I want to hear it. Just one moment. I'll be back in 1 minute. Just one moment. Wow. What a story. You hear this, kid?
the reason why it should be okay, cheer.
All right, big dog, I'm listening. Go ahead. The second kid you ever saw die. Go ahead.
Things saying that to that.
Oh, was it the same place?
So the pieces of protocol is used because of the military agenda. I know the people are saying you want to take them out, but you want to take them out. They want to kill the most important person in that group. Okay? Well, that's be the most lethal thing possible. Obviously, where it's done. Take that shot, back on that, and you use either a first shot and a snap shot, put a first shot, go on, pop up to it, and you will not select because the spread that first shot.
So are you killing guys with the shotgun or are you killing them with the pistol?
I'll kill someone with a shotgun, but security.
That's wild. What's your favorite way to kill somebody? What kind of
That's military and my favorite way to kill someone.
Have you ever had it where you thought you might die?
Yep, that's not. Are you put it in my hands? Rather than
Did you have
that was not bad. But the reason why I'm not doing it with a knife in my bare hands is because when I got fight, well, that's illegal. Like I said, and I like that. That makes sense.
Word.
So when it's a lethal situation or not, I can do the knife or not, I prefer to use one of their hands. That's how I take 9 times out of 10. If it's not a lethal situation, get away from me. You guys, I'm not good for those days. I am on the fucking ground.
and so you shoot a guy.
Until you stop.
You shoot a guy.
Until I beat me off.
You shoot a guy. And he's dead. And you call the police? Right.
So I want to first check myself first to see if I did that. I now that's very good to make sure that I'm not going to bleed out now. And if there's not in the military, when you're in a fight or even that you break your back, you will not, it's not 9% attack. You have not realized that after that.
Because of the adrenaline? Because of the adrenaline?
So I will one out to check them out while I do that. It's 2 seconds. I do it because I want to check that hospital. I teach myself my go back to my car. I, need against all out contact in the past, stuff like that. I need to make sure that house is clear. I don't want to be in a situation like that. So I'm looking over the house, all the to make sure there's no one else there. I make sure I that I sure myself so that
Have you ever? I want to know. I have another question for you. Just a moment. I'll be Have you ever had to take on like a game like this? What happened?
the nicest thing I was saying is about I still want say
Like, did you get shot or no? You get shot. Have you only been shot once?
right side of my shoulder, my back. Once
You've been shot twice.
before that's
You've been shot twice. Two bullets fired in a. You've been shot twice. How many times have you been shot, dog? Say that again. Say that again. How many times? How many times have you been shot? Over 100.
ACP pistol. I'm not branded MRC. I do not like having to do my one. That would be really good, but if you do and you don't really trust me, I feel that much. I definitely 45 or 15 in the back. Plus one is not a concealed carry gun. By any at all. It's I don't know what to say. Size, it's a medium size. So it's not like I got 19 or 19 reps. I think my size was 17. I have fired 45 ACP. 15 of my plus obviously around I got a normal capacity. At the same time, it's what I make that doesn't trust 9 mil. I hate 9 mil. Do not trust it. I think it will work. If I am a buying ammunition, I would actually go on rely on the government's changing what they think about that. I either use government's flex exactly a reason it doesn't penetrate because all of that is complete complete bull.
You don't agree with that?
I despise that. You see, one idea, or else you will not give you a million. I would think I would never, ever put it on.
I think you secretly want one.
Like 10 millimeter, 350, 356 32 ACP, stuff like that. I truly don't mind firing. Yeah, it's not like I'm just thinking I just do that round. It's not good. That's why. Like this 58 ridiculous. Yeah, once you go there, so I think 58 not first round. That's quite good. You can have a quick one. Yeah, you know something. You're in a wartime situation. You never more replay and I'm third of.
I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to answer this. Not see if you can. If I were to give you 100,000 quid right now to fire a 9 millimeter with million quid,
Nothing.
10 million.
Yeah, still would not.
For 10 million quid. All right, hold on. I'm not done. Big dog. I'm not done. 20 million quid. 50 million quid. 50 million. Boom. That's all you need. Once. You don't have to carry it or anything like that. Right? To make that clear.
I wouldn't because
I know you wouldn't want to. That's why we're going to give you 50 million quid.
I know, but it's still
Stop. Stop. I don't want to have this conversation until I say this. 100 million. Come on. You got to fire one from 100 million quid.
no.
You're sticking your nuts in the fucking head. All right. Here we go. $1 billion quid. $1 billion quid.
I don't. When I believe in something, you can't buy me money or do any of that.
100 billion quid.
Nope.
You'd be pretty close to the richest man on earth.
Yeah, you could go home and be unlimited and I'll still say no.
$1 trillion quid. Be the first trillion. Dude, you're kind of a bad person. You could save so many people's lives with $1 trillion. All you have to do is pull up the trigger. Like so many starving people, you would have to say to yourself, look, I don't want to do it, but I can save so many people with the money that, yeah, I'll do it for charity.
I know, but at the same time,
God, you could save the world. You could save the world with the push of a button.
in that situation, I would,
There go. So there you go.
Myself.
That's
No, like, the way I want to do is definitely make the non-nuclear bullet absolutely.
cool. That's cool. That's what you could do. There you go. There you go. So then we can say this. We could say this. When I'm a trillionaire and I have all the data in the world and all the other shit, and I'm gonna make you a trillionaire, I'm gonna take a 9mm at a gun range. You're gonna fire it once, and then we're gonna make the 9mm obsolete. That will be the last 9mm bullet ever shot. How do you like that?
I still wouldn't do that.
And then you wait, and then you're gonna wait.
I would go say,
Then you're gonna get
and I would go say, if you want to use that round for self-defense, it's in the street. No, because it hurts it. Let's tell you quickly why this one is shit.
Tell me.
Watch cops and ambulance after fire. Honestly, that they got to someone and they're still standing still. Why is this the case? Because we see that it's so hard. Well, two reasons, Factor. Number one, it's like an arrow trying to extend. That's why I described the 9mm polymer. The problem is with that round is that yes, it'll go to a ballistic job and it'll go and like oh, that's one problem in that you see. It's not passing any energy through into that person or into that object. Second thing is you'll see in that over penetration where it's just zipping straight through. You see, you could have a safe bullet. They're in the same size. But if it's going slightly faster, it will be sometimes that could dramatically decrease or increase power. Why is this? Because the speed of how much energy transfer, how much energy just after transfer does it. So let's try to shoot them into the head where that ground, if it breaks the skull, it's dead anyway, it's not really going to do anything. And well, my bill will kill after an hour. Yeah, fine. What about in an hour? Let's think about the first 30 minutes of that. So they can still fight and they can still kill. It's not good. But if we look at 45, and we even look at 32 ACV, or 80 ACV, or 10 mil, or 357 SIG, which is not 357 like 357 SIG is a 9mm bullet. On to a rather than put onto a something like basic. That's what 357 seconds. Here's the difference. What's one of those rounds? Yeah. They massive amount of energy transfer into the object. That's why they're quite lethal. Now, 9mm parabellum does not do that. So you need to just absolutely help the person until you hit them enough times in an extremely lethal place somehow that they go dead. That is the facts. That is the actual ballistic facts. The only difference about the 9mm is it can go through you, drop down roughly about 827, around that 800 mark. So, where now the target which is actually going to hit something at the roll speeds about 1,130 per second. That round actually goes to transfer energy like heavily the next thing that you do. It is quite literally a round that not everything that it shot at, but it will kill things behind the object. That is how fucked that round is. And to me, I believe gunshots are saying that this round is good self-defense. This is why people theoretically think this watch, and I would still not want to touch it because this round, people are saying it's amazing. But it's not. Look at the real data on this round. It is not good. And I just think I'm not one of those what you call movers all time. 45 or 50. It's not the 1911. Yeah, the 1911. It's not like it doesn't have the right name. That's kind of important, to be honest. buy this stuff, should be the only one that you should buy. I'm not saying any of that because I understand that these things are changing over these last couple of years, that these are not improvements to make, but at the same time, saying that brown is a failure. Is not good. Hence why I prefer 45 over brown. I'm going to can't find it in 2 minute time. You're gonna find it. Like that bill is great. The 2 minute bill is very high chance of the 2 minute time. And when knowing that information, that's not the I can have less how much look how much you spend on it. And I also have around as well, just like my 45s, just like my my potential, my 308.
Big dog, let's get to brass tacks. If I put a gun on the table between you and a bad guy, and I say it's a 9mm, and either you kill him with that, or he's going to kill you with it, what are you going to do?
Well, the thing is, it's not really that much. I know how to shoot properly, and it's a simple shot of shooting at the head.
Where do you want to hit him? Where do you want to hit him in the head? Where do you want to hit him in the head?
Personally, here's what I would do.
I want to know step by step, with as much minutia as you can absolutely fucking give me. Give me as much detail as you can. I want to know where in the face you're going to shoot the guys.
Knowing that the biggest one is to the temple, it's just that's where I would find
Right here,
time.
like right here.
Just slightly more. It's going to that's the cortex.
Anyway, wait. That's a good move. I like that.
Place where it's going to easily go to the skull. I'm shooting right in the center of you.
Right.
I shot to the side, you're back on this. I'm going to bring your stuff like that. Fight. Bring that more red and somehow don't hit you. Well, I'm putting in I don't really have to make shots. That's why I don't like them. Well, that's why I say we have an E45 square. That's why I say decent gun. They do the same thing. It's cheaper in different ammo. A mil 45, 80, yeah, it's also 57.6, which is an amazing one. Yeah, that's a thing. Recoil is not like that's good. Died there. But at the same time, it's not the quality. That's why I like using the effort. Because it's got 15 rounds. It makes it cheaper in a decent bar. Same time, I think the features of it, I can see the gun itself. That's the thing. It's got a pump frame and stainless steel. Top of it. So it's actually good. It's got not aftermarket support. Great. It's not basically I would say it's almost like a hybrid because it's got built-in single axle and the rubber trigger. But the decent work, not complete. And that's why it's not high priced on that. Something that's $1,000 on that. But that's why stop. It's a good gun because and to me, military should use it. No, they have FX 5 fast girls. And the modularity sizes and the actual FNX did all it's not that good. Had all functions and everything. And the actual troops preferred it over the thing.
Okay. Have you ever?
No.
Have you ever shot a silenced PP7? Yeah. Have you ever shot a silenced PP7? That's James Bond game GoldenEye. I don't know if it's a GoldenEye.
No, the PPK.
That's what I meant. Silenced PPK. Apologies. You shot a silenced PPK?
I have got a other PPK. I took one. Some of this.
Baller. I
I just
understand.
like that.
Yeah, it's super cute. Man, you have one? That's tight. You gotta
I got
get a silencer for that one. And then you can have a silenced PPK, and walk around like James Bond. You're already James Bond. You have a plane. You fucking go around and kill people to like for like vigilante justice for children. You're like James Bond, man. The only thing is, the Queen steps. You're having to work Rome now. You sounded. You're like American James Bond. You're like Jimmy's stick because it's not Bond. It's like sticking. Anyway, you're amazing, Tom. You are fucking flying around the United States, killing bad guys. Dude, you have a plane and it's fucking serious as fuck. No. You kill people when you need to. You kill people when you need to. Have you ever thought about flying? Have you ever thought about flying over a hurricane?
I've thought that's a stupid thing, but then I thought, no, I can't let it. But by the way, if you actually ever wanted a decent website for other stuff like ammo, stuff like Guardian Angel, whatever,
Yeah.
I always recommend the website which many people know about. I'm sure you know the couple models like PSA and stuff like that. They're called Extreme Guns and Ammo. Quite literally, Extreme Guns and Ammo. And that's where I bought my model from. At the same time, they do a product on there which I use as an officer, which is the Kindergarten Angel for the bus.
All right.
It's a $40 non-lethal defense tool,
All right.
which is extremely good.
Now I have what I feel is a good question for you. Do you feel as if it is too easy or too hard to get a gun in the United States?
You want especially with concealed carry licenses, it's hard. The idea is to make those one protect the gun. Just want to get just a block that's reliable, not impressive. Like you definitely be in the general study, it's not really interesting too much. It's know that don't anything happen, got a tool. It's hard.
No.
I feel for that because I think for them that is because it is just completely just absolutely I hope like us like that people not understand a lot of things. I just think it's ridiculous for them to just be able to run just because of something just for defense. They're not interested in running. Our rifle, the difference in 12 inch. That's probably a on the YouTube video, that shot $30, best pistol, average, but no more, they have a power, definitely gonna look at the I think it's hard for them.
All right.
Something like that, you're not gonna find it should be that hard.
Word, Doug. The gang member you killed, what gang was he a member of? The West Side?
No, he was actually hard,
Baja Blast. Shout out to the Baja Blast. And he shot you? No. Caspian Sea. Hey, wait. This is my man here. Caspian Sea. You have to meet my man Blue. You're my boy, Blue. Blue, do you mind if I tell Caspian Sea about you?
I don't mind. By the way, though, buddy, Rabbi, the village was like a company that was no kind of in the guardian age of the first. I'm just saying, I think it's almost the person I love that. I need to find everything. People just being from, it's pretty good.
Amazing.
And fires out like a big weapon stuff. Even though it's one that's good project and it works really well.
You know,
It's like 3 months drive and it's pretty good.
Blue here. Blue here is a bounty hunter. He's a licensed pilot. He's a crypto whale. And he's my new friend who is just recovering from some flight from last week. And he is just a really exciting person. We were just talking about some of his most, look, okay, this is the thing. So my man Blue here has killed 13 people in 9 months. Is that correct, Lloyd? Or 14 now?
I don't want the exact amount. I'm not like serial killer.
This year, he's killed like more than a dozen people. Tell him how you kill people.
The work out.
I know.
I'm pretty good. Yeah, I'll be honest. I do
Word.
someone tries to do something bad, that's a bad way to do it.
So he was telling me about all the guns that he has, and he has. I asked him if he had a silenced PPK from James Bond. He doesn't have the silence, but he has a PPK, like that cute little gun. He has a bunch of different guns.
Yes. Yes. Notice me. Do you have a every single time I go with you, I watch my grip. I watch that.
Does it move around a lot?
Comes straight back. That slide will come straight back and catch you.
How many bullets does it hold?
Six.
And you're supposed to
I've heard this thing about that.
Let me introduce you to our friends here. We have Riser and Captain C. Riser and Captain C, this is my friend Bluey. Bluey is a bounty hunter. Also, he's a licensed pilot and crypto whale. And he was just telling us about some of the people that he's killed this year as a bounty hunter. And if you're wondering what the stories are like, how he's killed so many people, generally he takes bids that are very dangerous, like murderers and rapists, molesters and things like that. And he goes out and usually they're armed and he's armed and they're both grabbing for a gun and he kills them. So that's how he's killed about 12 or so different people within the last 9 months. And yeah, with that, he was telling us actually Riser would be really interested in this. He was telling us about pepper ball guns. Tell us everything you know about pepper ball guns, Louis.
Okay.
Oh, he's going to tell you everything. God, he's going to tell you absolutely everything about it. The etymology, the history. Let's go. Here we go.
By the way, I know I said I don't like that. I'm just going to say it's just the continental. I have seen a Chicago XL for the now. Tonight, I might buy one of those in the future. I'll get it for $40 just because it looks.
There you go. Okay, just close up that conversation. He hates 9mm so much. I offered him $1 trillion to fire a 9mm bullet one time, and he said no until I convinced him that he could help the world with it under no other circumstances. And he said he would then shut down the production of the 9mm. It would be the last one shot. That's how much he hates
I didn't say that. I didn't say I shut it down. I said the whole on the real individual lineup.
that. Okay.
I'm not gonna say you should play one on. I am focusing on because I don't like rounding down for people, but I'm glad to advise that a round isn't the best for self-defense because that's my opinion. But I don't think it is. People have proven it.
Absolutely.
People say no, it's the best. Just like third shot is going to act like it's slow, and then if you have well, it's just going to go straight through that motherfucker. So it's not going to have that spread. Which is going to have that spread. It's not going to penetrate through walls, and it's still going to.
Here's the scenario. Here's the scenario. You're walking your dog, and you're walking your dog. We can play that. We'll play that. Hey, let's do that. Willie, I want you to download and play the PLATO. We're about to play some mini golf. We want to include you. You can play it on your PC. Dude, this guy has everything. Okay, so play it on your PC. It's called PLATO. Its symbol is a little, it's a little guy. You can see it. I don't know if you can see it on my phone. Okay. It's that blue one. You see that? The blue one? You see the blue one? Yes, you want to download that right now. And so we're going to wait for you. In the meantime, okay. So, thank you. All right. Riser, you ready? Okay. So,
really like the.
will you please tell us everything you know about hyperball guns? Oh,
Guns, I really like them because
whoa.
they do work.
Let's see. You see this?
They will work out well. Jesus themselves are great, but if someone's on something good enough, it's not really going to do that much. This is a full gun.
Is it
Different thing does. I'm not saying they don't work, I'm just saying overall, I think full guns do a better job because they can have CSPs inside of them. That can do a good job at the same time. It's like being there around.
Is this not Halloween?
Overall, I think I'm definitely going to get something which is related. If you're thinking about buying something like that, that's the program. So I would say look at self-help, so you're going to do a good job there. But overall, you want to do more of that, I would definitely recommend. Make your something which you like, especially the law enforcement stuff.
Yeah, right. You can talk about it. He's been thinking of starting his own. He's thinking of starting his own hyperball company. What do you think? It's not against bears. They call it Bears Scare. What do you think?
With that, I would never do something like that. I will do it.
Okay.
I'm trying to worry about there's one that day I don't have a chance. I just want to be okay. which I think is good for I've never had a story actually found me. That was I cranked it up.
Yeah, he said choose one, dog. I remember that one vividly. That shit.
I was gonna oh no. And wanted to talk to the county how to drive for
So you're asking me anything you want.
yeah, you have to work.
That was going to be a question I had too.
Yes. Not a good thing. The Connect system because it's trusted. It's advised diesel and I with the 30 something, which is good. It's not like it's going to cost me a money. Go this with the system. I like it because it what I've done. It doesn't save potential on the device. It saves it externally, which is but if anything off of it, that's still safe, which is good. You can't find out right you guys, but so it's not right there.
Shut the fuck up. This is the asshole over here who's like, oh yeah, this is what you want to do. After he literally just tripped over his own fucking feet on his tee shot.
Someone who is Canadian, aren't they? Someone who is you know, so that was
Wait, did you say you have throat cancer?
Yeah.
You want to know what the cure to cancer is? Okay. I got you. I got you. You good, baby. You good. All right. What other stuff do you like? Yeah. What's your what kind of food? You like?
I really do like have my book. I don't try to hope that much. When I do that time, I do love it's great. I like how to especially the seasons I do it. But I like steakhouses, stuff like that, try different things. That's more my style. I'm not the person that will order KFC and McDonald's. I'm a person that's wait to a steakhouse sort of place like that. It's real.
Word, dog.
That's the kind of guy I
What's your favorite kind of meat?
yeah, we have this is I think I'm no, my favorite steak by the way, I definitely do that. I said that. I'm not joking either, because I like my steak. My favorite type of steak, though, it's a good one. But my favorite type of steak, anyway, we're going to go with any type of steak. It's got to be an awesome great steak. It's like very slow cooked steak, but it's got a lot of flavor. Like, it's got a lot. But I really like it a lot.
How do you like your steak done? do you like the crystal?
Me, I don't like it. I like it medium. Medium well. Uh, you know, I just like it when it's not big, but you don't really share big. Yes, I just that's how I prefer mine. And I think before this is the thing. I I don't want to go into another just go until it goes away because a lot of them they don't seem to come up one more than it's almost like medium rare before, and it's really just improve it up.
Right.
And I don't like that. And I also like that I like I mean so I like going to different places. I don't like style of food and stuff like that. But my best dinner I ever got in my uh like first time is the relic was a CC uh, M2. You know, because the time it's like something like that. It's not the best, but when I look like a complex school like I don't want to keep it in. I feel that much of it for what I did. I did the yeah. So yeah, I talked about a few things, but then when I heard Wolfgang made a comment but some time dollars, which was decent, had a library on these sites, kind of reliable, stuff like that. And I went with it. So all the time I put it up with okay.
Do you own a pepper gun?
I read my
Do you own a pepper gun?
yes, yes, I do.
Do you think it could take down a bear? Do you think it could take down a bear? Yeah.
Yeah. I would say I I don't think so. Just because if you I am in a situation about what I've seen as, rubber on the back neck. If see with that I still think I need to right now that you do that because my parents they're made to be they're made to stop humans.
But what if it was called?
Yes, motherfucking bears, I feel like it's not like sometimes to me, I just don't think that would be good. That's really it is.
No,
Oh no, I don't.
he's from America.
I just want to. I would recommend for a bear.
Yeah, big one.
Let's see. I got it. I would ideally say 500, 58. I would. I think that the size and definitely velocity that runs
What about bear spray?
because either way, I don't know. I just and I could probably understand best for that situation. Why the hell are you thinking about killing it when things gonna kill you? Like that, animals at the same time. Someone's gonna try and kill me like that. I am gonna try it. I'm gonna kill you maybe just $10 can of this gas that's up here to set up this thing. I am gonna think you know what I reach my fucking anger. I'm gonna bust as many fucking rods through it as I possibly can.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's what I'm thinking
I'm thinking the same fucking thing.
in that situation. And I'm gonna mess it up. Well, that'll put I'm gonna do it.
I get that, dog.
It's quite easy. It's not bad.
Would you have sex with the bear if you had the bear's consent?
I rather do with those things.
There you go. All right.
Oh,
So you wouldn't kill the bear. You wouldn't have sex with the bear. Would you take the bear as a pet? Would you take the bear as a pet?
why are you asking that question?
Well, it actually goes back to a discussion that we've had previously in depth about this product that we've come up with called Bear Scare, which is essentially a strobe light with with a strobe light with what else did we say? An alarm on it, and it also has bear spray on it. And you're like the most like you actually know something about firearms. Thank you, thank you. So so you actually you have some experience with this. Essentially, do you think it's possible to put just imagine a strobe light on with sound and bear spray and keep a bear away?
I don't think. I don't know. I can't say something which I don't know. I just think that in that situation, I just pick it up because I'm gonna mess around with it. I'm back. I'm giving pointers. I don't. I don't know. I don't know.
Okay, so
Say most of the chances of that in the moment. So
but it's got a chance.
I'm gonna check the don't check the so the unified that is a full.
Just one moment. Just one moment. So what? Just one moment. Just one moment. What are we supposed to do?
Okay. Yeah. Find the hole. All right. I literally last
Oh, fuck you guys. You guys, wait. What happened to Riser's Ball? What happened to Riser's Ball? Hold on. What happened? Dude, I'm trying to get intel on your product. Oh, now I see. Dude, what the fuck? I can't see. Is it like really dark for anyone else?
Yeah.
Spooky feel.
This is the Halloween.
What the fuck? What the fuck? Dude, fuck you guys for saying it's find the hole. Because I just hit the shit in the corner. I thought it, I didn't see that like there were like there's like a black lagoon or some shit. Is it a black lagoon where you have to go all the way to the start? Yeah, no, I get that. Oh, is that one water? Dude, This hole sucks. What the fuck? Fuck this hole. Dog, it's so dark. Oh, you're right. You're 100% right. To explain my earlier question about the bear, what you were saying, I talk about only a certain limited amount of subjects, and one of them is telekinesis or telepathy, and it's a thought in the future that you may be able to have intercourse or anything that you want with higher level thinking. You can get there. So we talk about telepathy and telekinesis a lot, and essentially with telepathy, if you were able to pay somebody to say something to me and the thing, hey, what's going on? Hey, somebody saying something to me at Rumble. Hey, basically, hello, hello. Can you hear me? That's wonderful. You're converting to Judaism because of me? You're on you. Well, I'm glad that I can be a light to other people. That's amazing. Shout out to you. Shout out to Rumble. Hey, you. I love you too. You're amazing. Hey, come to my Discord. It's discord.me/rabbi. Discord.me/rabbi. Rookies, baby. That's what we're doing.
You know that put stuff in the bad stuff.
Excellent. This person is coming to the Discord. Discord.me/rabbi.
They're putting really bad stuff in things.
Oh, friends with Marty. Riser, you're up.
Gone.
Marty wants to marry you. Well, good on you, girl. Come to my Discord. It's discord.me/rabbi. I can't believe somebody found me on Rumble. My knees literally test. Wow. That's amazing. Good on you. Discord.me/rabbi. Discord.me/rabbi. Somebody's talking about that too. Yo. Come to discord.me. Oh, dude, they're talking to me on Twitch. I'm getting to talk to them on Twitch and Rumble. I'm a big fucking deal. I'm the FD. No, my friend. Totally different people. Totally different people. Trust me. Anyone who knows redundancies and how this bullshit works, I do. And I'm telling you right now, these are two different people. One of them is saying that Marty wants to marry one of the people here, and then the other people are just doing like devil horns and stuff. So cool. Happy that you are here. All right.
Email 14. So,
Oh! Look at that shot.
Yes, it's one of the men over like in the room.
You know what else would be a breath of fresh air, Riser?
So,
No, that would that would not be any breath of fresh air. I don't know what the fuck you're saying. Something so dick would not be a breath of fresh air. For the record,
oh, wow. That's what I'm looking out for. Yeah, let's say, oh, so what's that?
oh, I just almost went in the water on a makeup pool, and they were lying. That's a good shot. Riser, that's a good shot. As we see, ready to see your need and destroy.
Who's up there in the water?
Terrible.
Guys,
Water. Put it in water.
am I?
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, perfect shot, Doc.
the next one is gonna be
Let's see what you got here. That's been seized ball. That's been seized ball. Going.
Square one.
That's not going to happen. That's not going to happen.
Water bump right now.
Bryce, are you ready for this one? Are you fucking serious?
Right now. Yeah, but you could have sent him back all the way to
You're going to say instead of that's funny. That's a very good shot. I'm gonna. This is as we see, you ready for one of the great water bumps in the history of mankind? We're done. You're done. That was cool. Glad that you're here. Thanks for being so friendly. Hey, your microphone literally sounds like you bought it at the gas store. Is that way you can prove on that?
It's funny because people can join this call and say that they don't even have microphones, but somehow that they've access to it, even if that's right. Well,
Yo, oh, you're good, man. You sound loud and clear now. Hey, how are you, big dog? What's good? Good job. Are you? Hell yeah, dog. Fuck yeah, man. You're almost retired. That's exactly right.
So kidding?
No way. Wow.
And leave on course, I want salts and refuse to get water.
So what?
Saying you make a horse drink water, and you have water. That is that some people can be despite that it will directly harm them. Okay. It's like I could go up to you right now. I would kill you for the rest of you. What else there's some people can be stuck like fight that you so,
Okay, just answer your question. The phrase "you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink" is a proverb of unknown origin. It suggests that you can provide someone with an opportunity, but you can't force them to take advantage. So it's either has an unknown origin.
so to fucking awesome. I always wanted to go to the East and Obama on the East because
What up?
I was gonna say something. Do know do you know what it's like when you die? How it feels. Where I
Oh, let's hear about it.
okay. So I'm also meditated using meditation ascertain so near so I saw my Indian god is Shiva.
Uh-huh. Well, how did you almost die?
So I've seen some in the COVID vaccine. Rare, rare problem. People not rare, but it's relatively rare.
There we go, kids.
I don't understand around that stuff. So the position one. No, I understand what you said, but what you said about condition with your crossword that condition is also correct. Like it's not that makes sense. I agree with you. I agree with you. I did this, and I have join. Church.
No, you don't want to join the church. You want to join the synagogue.
That when you die, it's, I think it's just like, that's what I do.
Yeah.
This is
Okay.
it's a lemon. It's a lemon.
It's not really a lemon. This is made out of cardboard.
Cool.
It's not a real lemon.
Okay, I believe that is a good thing with time machine. I'm sorry.
I got you.
This planet is
I don't understand.
Nor do I.
Turn.
Switzerland.
Exactly. That's right. That's what I just said. Exactly. 100%. You're good. Good.
Name.
Okay.
Good job. I haven't been to a synagogue yet. I have been trying to follow the Torah.
Question. How can you get someone just their name and someone? Shut up.
Every letter has a corresponding number, and
Magic.
you can use
No, I'm just saying how the internet works. You just put some.
yes.
And if you don't just like,
Absolutely will. All you have to do is your first and last name. Okay, you know. You don't understand gematria because it is very simple. Essentially, your name is something that's a number. As long as you have your first and last name, it corresponds to a number. It's essentially a math equation.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. No, he didn't. It's magic. Shut up. That's why I want to be there. He doesn't ask me questions.
We're all on board.
So, did the question good?
So, to be nice, I thought that around everyone around him. It's
Beautiful.
one of only 8,500 Leo statues that like this. I was hoping maybe I could give this to you. Or I could like hold on to it until I get over to visit.
Here's what we'll do. Hold on to it. And when we meet, absolutely, and then I'll be able to see you in person when we meet, and I will be able to store it in the archives. I already have a plan where we're going to store all the stuff that people have to give me, and that is at the Rothschild Museum.
Yes. How
Hey, we can do that too, man.
trying the war to end in
It's gonna last like another 4 years or so.
I'm not going to stop trying anytime soon. I might as well go to Israel.
How about your ask me a question? You're not Jewish. No, if you believe in your religion, the United States needs to get better outcomes. It's not because I think yeah. No, it's not. That's interesting. That's how this house for crowd stuff.
How do you get me?
Alistair Crowley.
You're excellent.
Yeah, Alistair Crowley, the Rothschild child. Oh, yeah.
Great grandfather was fucking Alistair Crowley. And my last name means master.
That's right, bro. That's what the Italians say because he was fucked up.
So I want you Campbell is on my desk by the end of this decade. Or I'm gonna, I don't know, demand. I don't know.
That's right. Him and Rabbi are talking tonight. Telepathic information. Rabbi's like, you're like a bear.
Not really. I look like I'm actually that.
What's a dice? Dice? No. There's no way you're lesbian, bro. There's no way you're oh, God. No way. No. You're fucking girl?
Excellent. Well, we welcome all people
You're
here.
a dude. You have a fucking kid. How does not happen? Those two boys facial bad. I'm sorry. Wait, I ain't shit done. I'm a real fucking man. So wait, you consider yourself a woman? You consider yourself a fucking woman or a man, or like you just take testosterone to fucking go here?
I just did it for fun. I wanted to go here.
Oh my god, that's like that's crazy. I don't want to ask you for pleasure about hunting stuff because like nobody women have those. I think I'm not like you look like. I'm not. Hey, no, nigga. I thought you were away from that screen. I was looking away from that screen. I wanted to hear that screen. No.
Then I realized actually, it's fast, it's fast.
Okay, I'll tell you something. When I come to school, I do fucking action stuff. So it's fucking when you see somebody like yourself, which looks like a man, and you would slowly go bring over there. There's no being pushed. It's not just facts on how the things work. I suppose. And they have no time. I don't think any wrong with it. And by the way, if you must be Russian,
Telepathically to Rabbi.
Picking up everything that you're laying down. And I want you to know that we.
I'm telepathic.
Excellent.
you and your rabbi think in the same fucking mindset.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rabbi's my twin.
We're like,
Yeah, that's right.
well,
That's right.
it's amazing. I think that it's amazing, and I think that your choices are amazing. I support you with how you want to live your life.
That's right, Rabbi. Whatever you
I mean, who am I going to say? What am I going to say otherwise?
I'm looking for an honest man.
Rabbi, I think he wants you, dog. I think he wants you, Rabbi. I think he really awesome, dude. Shut up. This is Aristotle, philosopher of this.
No. I'm Zeno. I'm doing my honest.
Him and fucking Rabbi are the new Aristotle. Aristotle, we have that fucking dude.
Hey, whatever you want to be. Whatever you want to be. Absolutely.
It's like this idea. She was a limit.
I don't think I would be proud of these guys.
Shoot me, I'm gonna that will buy. I want to shoot
You know,
You have a really bad. Where do you have so many bad? Tell us about the bad.
in Australia, they play
told 200 different people I died for a certain.
you have any photos of you used to fucking woman?
Where, dog? Where you are hot now. I love your self-confidence.
Some of the best one of Rabbi's just like sitting and he's like, yeah, whatever.
No, I wouldn't be able to say what it is.
Guys,
I wouldn't know what they have to say. It's important. Everyone deserves an opportunity to say whatever they like. So go ahead. I'm happy to hear it.
I was like, that's hilarious. And I've been watching it all my life. I should probably, at this point, if Rothschild is like this, like, I want to be around people who are this one. I don't give a fuck. Look, I fucking act like I'm a top tree.
hey, you're not Christian. I'm not physics standard. If you did that to me, I would have definitely maybe you'll take it music. I would think that goddamn priest, I would definitely got my knife off. I'll take it music. You messed it. You
What kind of music do you like? Oh, that's cool. Look how cool that is. Look how cool that is. Sounds good. Absolutely. I like it. I love those colors. I love your confidence. I love your confidence. You do you. You do what makes you happy. That's a wonderful thing. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. If let's talk about that. If life extension is a thing, and mind uploading is a thing, and you can upload your mind into an avatar, a clone of yourself, a cybernetic being, an android, whatever you want to be, you might have relationships with men in the future, with women in the future, with both in the future, perhaps with an extraterrestrial in the future.
Listen, this guy Rabbi's like, fuck it, he's never gonna get something, so he needs to fucking upload his fucking
Okay.
Upload my consciousness after
What's that?
doesn't matter what form you take in the spirit realm, you will all be eaten by the great rainbow serpent.
There you go.
It's inevitable.
There you go.
The promise of God is not in his life, in the garden of earth for as long as you focus there. You know
Yeah.
how much you can drink before you die?
How much is that?
It's actually a lot more than you can
How much can you drink?
water, capsule of hydrogen peroxide, the capsule of bleach at the same time, the hydrogen peroxide on the brain, which neutralizes your stomach. You drink as much bleach as you use sand.
the fuck would you want to do that in the first place? So,
Because I wanted to be dead for like 20 fucking years. Like, I'm not gonna kill myself.
There you go. Good on you. Like everybody's gonna live for something. Frank Sinatra said, "The best revenge is massive success." Chinese martial. I don't want to hear you talk like this.
I don't know, dog. I'm distracted. Your name is fucking Nicole, dude. What I was going to say. You look like a 50-year-old Jewish dad, bro. This is like the last of all the email. This is like everyone would have wanted to like. This is how you look at us in the future. Good. What I think is quite we actually question every single one of the person. That any process kind of work on it. See when you were a woman and not Jewish fat guy. He wasn't bad, but most of the which were on the fire, but people who like us, like, for example, I'm a God. I would never, I'm not even fucking good. I think that I am a God and I have passed it. So for women, start making look at, she would be like, I'm a girl, I want to look like a boy. That's disgusting. That's how I feel. Okay, you're in a fucking see what you look like. Why do you constantly BS on this?
Very cool.
That's cool. Yeah, let's see what you fucking look like before you transition to that Jewish guy. You want to offer the service? I covered that. You're drag queen. I think
This is before
you were always like a dude, or you like, okay, let me see a clean photo. I don't want to be curious. You're always a dude, bro. You always do. That's bullshit. I don't know. That's what that lady looks like. So on the eyes that it's so bright. I'm not
But the Communist Party is a revolutionary organization which could move China into the future. The establishment of the Chinese Communist Party was followed by closely on these events, and we will pick up that story next lecture. The end of the second decade of the 20th century, China had gone through 10 years of post-imperial turmoil. First World War had come, hopes of perhaps a improved situation in the world after the war had been dashed by the Versailles Conference. Many Chinese had begun to search for radical alternatives to the ideas that had brought China to the present circumstances, whether it was traditional political culture or the liberal democratic ideas associated with the books of the Republic. At the beginning of the 1920s, new ideology had grown out of the activities of anarchists, socialists earlier in the century, particularly from the influence of the revolution in 1917 in China, and took on institutional form in the founding of the Chinese Communist Party. The party was founded in Shanghai in 1921. It was the result of a get together in July that actually put the party institutionally in place, formally in place. It was the result of a process that had been going on for about a year. Marxist study groups in Beijing, Shanghai, and other places sprung up in the First World War and Bolshevik Revolution. These had grown in size. They had begun to reach out and try to form links with workers' organizations, socialist groups, and other parts of the country. Beginning around 1920, as the Soviet Union began to hold together, the Communist International was established. Agents from Moscow began in various parts of Asia, and China in particular, to assist in the process of revolutionary organization. In China, agents from Communist International were involved with the establishment of the Chinese Communist Party, the organization of the Chinese. I'll talk about the nationalists. First, I want to finish up with the communists. These advisors from the area came to China with the Marxist study group, began to groundwork to establish a national organization, and they helped to suggest the terms of a program, organizational format for the party. And in 1921, in the summer of 1941, assisted with the committee of the First Party Congress. There were only about a dozen delegates at the First Party Congress. Many people were unable to contact with them. Some of the people who were among this first dozen sort of drifted off into relative obscurity. One individual was president, not because he didn't have all that actor up to the point. I'm sorry, with my whom I promised had been living in Beijing, had been exposed to the Marxist study groups there, his work in the library in Beijing, and had made his way to Shanghai and was able to take part in this initial gathering. The communist advisors to both the party and the put forward an analysis of the situation in China, which called for an alliance, a united front between communists and nationalists. The Nationalist Party, which was the leadership of Sun Yat-sen in the early 1920s, was reorganized internally along the disciplined lines of the Bolshevik Party, the Russian Communist Party. And this made the National Party a more effective organization than it had previously been. One of the frustrations that Sun Yat-sen had faced in his life was that he was a good orator, he was a good speaker, a good fundraiser, a good propagandist. He wasn't much of an organizer. He didn't seem to have figured out a way to make the National Party into a truly effective political force. The advice of the communists and organizational changes that they hoped to put in place within the National Party gave it greater cohesion, greater internal discipline, and turned it into a more functional political organization. This did not mean that the Nationalist Party embraced the Marxist-Leninist theology of the Bolsheviks or of the advisors of the Americans. But it did mean that Sun Yat-sen in particular was more open to some kind of cooperation, some sort of collaboration between the Communist Party and the Nationalist Party. The first United Front was, of course, put together, and under the terms of this, individual members of the Chinese Communist Party could join the Nationalist Party, could be members of both, and could indeed even serve as officers within units of the Nationalist Party. The Communist Party was not to join the Nationalist Party organization. In other words, there wasn't a merger between the two parties, but individuals could be members of both parties. Many individual communists did join the Nationalist Party, participated in political activities of the Nationalist Party, and some even rose to positions of relative prominence within the Nationalist Party, including with great significance for leader development. Mao Zedong became leader of the Peasant Bureau within the Nationalist Party. This was peasantry was of course not seen as the most important group. In urban workers, industrial proletariat were seen as the focal point by both nationalists. So Mao's position in dealing with peasantry was not particularly prestigious, but it becomes his experience there, the ideas that he developed there, become quite important, as we shall see later on. In 1925, Sun Yat-sen died, and this is a turning point because so long as Sun Yat-sen was alive, so long as he was dedicated to this particular vision of the national revolution and of a socially progressive version of nationalism, the alliance with the Communist Party made a lot of sense. The Communist Party was still relatively small, an organization, a threat to nationalists early on, and willingness to work together resulted in benefits from both sides. It allowed the Communist Party to grow and gain a lot of experience, but it also benefited the Nationalist Party. Much of the work the communist organizers did was quite diligent, quite effective, and they got actually quite a lot of members into the Nationalist Party, non-communist members into the Nationalist Party. In the wake of Sun Yat-sen's death, something of a leadership vacuum developed at the top of the Nationalist Party, and it takes a little while, a year or so, for a successor figure, a single successor, to really emerge. When that happens, the individual who comes to dominate the Nationalist Party first as a military leader, eventually as his political leader as well, is Chiang Kai-shek. Now, Chiang Kai-shek himself is a very interesting figure. He was a military man, and he had been sent by Sun Yat-sen to study in Russia and to learn about the Bolshevik Revolution, learn about the communist systems of organization, learn about the Red Army, and he had spent 6 months studying and working in Russia. When he came back from that experience, he was very impressed with the organizational skills and techniques of the Bolshevik. But he was confirmed as a communist. He was very, very opposed to the political program of the Russian Revolution and the Communist Party. Chiang Kai-shek became the commandant of the Nationalist Military Academy at Whampoa, outside of Canton, Guangzhou, in Guangdong province. And in that position, was able to establish quite a network of personal connections loyal to the national military. He used his influence within the army and his position as a leader of the National Army to, as a factor in the political maneuvers that took place after Sun Yat-sen's death, and used that as a way to advance his own position, eventually turned as the strong party. In 1926, the year after Sun Yat-sen's death, Chiang Kai-shek finally felt himself to be in a strong enough position in the nationalist movement, and felt the nationalist movement itself to be strong enough militarily to launch an effort to reunify China. And what it undertakes what we call the border expedition. Nationalists had their base down south in Guangdong province. Guangdong province had essentially been the only part of China that the Nationalist Party could control. The rest of China had, of course, been divided up amongst various regions. Of course, it's in some respects, Chiang Kai-shek simply wanted to have the National Party as his political machine. Be that as it may, the Northern Expedition, which gets underway in 1926, proves to be a very successful undertaking. The Nationalist armies essentially followed the same route that the Taiping movement was following back in the 1870s, up through central China to the Yangtze River Valley, and then turning east and heading towards Nanjing. And moving a little more quickly than the Taiping time, of course, simply over a few months, they managed to gain control of most of southern China. And this happens through a variety of mechanisms. In some instances, nationalist forces fight against a local war, and they generally win, beat the local leader, and absorb the nationalist forces. In other instances, Chiang Kai-shek was able to negotiate political peace, under which the local railroads would pledge their loyalty to him and would therefore sort of be brought under the nationalist umbrella. In other instances, he simply bribed people. He would buy the loyalty of individuals who might be appealed to on any other basis, even if he didn't feel like fighting or initial risk fighting. By one means or another, the Northern Expedition succeeds by the spring of 1927 in basically getting all of southern China south of the river into nationalist hands. In April of 1927, the nationalist forces reached the outskirts of Shanghai. And at this point, Chiang Kai-shek makes a condition that it's a great political significance. He has reluctantly, up to this point, maintained the united front with the Communist Party, which Sun Yat-sen had put in place, not wishing to jeopardize his own position as the heir of Sun Yat-sen, as the successor to Sun Yat-sen. He hasn't felt up till now strong enough to do anything other than continue this policy. But by April of 1927, having successfully carried out the Northern Expedition, having gained almost control of half of China, he feels his position too much. And so he decides to do away with communists, to eliminate them, not just as partners in the enterprise, but to try to drive them out, to try to destroy them as a political force in China. Accordingly, when the national forces reach the outskirts of Shanghai, he stops. He does not take nationalist army into the city, but instead allows communist at the city and within the trade unions of the city. Shanghai was by this time the most industrialized city in China. Many factories there, many thousands and thousands of workers. Most of them were organized into trade unions with at least the being dominated by. When the nationalist army approaches Shanghai, communists launch an uprising. The idea will be to seize the city from within, so that the nationalist army will not fight its way in. But Shanghai stops outside of Shanghai and doesn't intervene, doesn't come in. And the insurrection in China is then suppressed by a combination of the troops of the foreign power, not by a sort of an international city. So the British, the French, the Americans, the Germans, the Japanese, all have forces there. And those forces, those police and military are mobilized to attack the workers, to attack the country. And in conjunction with those government forces of the foreign powers, the secret societies or crime circles in China also come out and start to attack the workers, communist workers. And this combination of foreign powers and the sort of Shanghai underworld destroyed the communist movement in China. Many hundred communist organizers and leaders are arrested and executed. Others die fighting in the streets. Many workers are shot or arrested and imprisoned, and some of them executed because they were to the Communist Party. It's a very bloody uprising and suppression of the communist movement in China. It represents, it signals the break, split between the Nationalist Party and the Communist Party. And while the process completely unfold, a sort of left-wing group at the Nationalist Party at the city of Wuhan, continues to align itself with the Communist Party for a while. But before long, Rothschild is able to convince them they really need to split with the communists and stick with him, intimidates them militarily, and by the end of the summer of 1927, the left wing of the National Party unites with Chiang Kai-shek's stream. And Chiang now is the undisputed leader of the nationalist movement and of the nationalist movement, which is no longer hampered by this alliance with the Chinese Communist Party. Well, Chinese Communist Party finds itself in a difficult situation. Their principal political orientation up to this had been toward organizing urban workers. The classical theories of Marxism had emphasized the role of the industrial class as the vanguard of the revolution, force which would lead the transformation of society, build socialism. But now, the organizational base of the Chinese Communist Party in the cities amongst the industrial is destroyed. Shanghai was the most important location. Once this rupture takes place in Shanghai, it's repeated elsewhere in other ports, in other centers of industry, and the communists are systematically driven out of urban China. How is the party to survive? What are they to do? It's at this point that the role of Zedong begins to be significant. Zedong, as leader of the present bureau of the National Party, has spent a lot of time in the countryside, a lot of time observing what was happening away from the city, away from the great coastal ports, in places like his home. What he saw was was large peasant movement, unlike peasant movements that we've seen in earlier times. But now, movements which were taking place in a modern context, and which could be imbued with a modern ideology led by Rothschild, a modern political party. He saw the uprisings of the peasants as a very, very powerful force, a force so powerful that, as he put it to his comrades, their choice was to either try to beat it or just to get out of the way, because this movement was going to sweep across the country. And if the Communist Party could lead it, they could turn it into a revolution. Well, these ideas have been very hard up until this time. But in the wake of the suppression of the party in the cities, those ideas began to seem a little more reasonable. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. In fact, it takes a number of years for Mao's ideas to begin to be accepted and to begin to be dominant in the Chinese Communist Party. Initially, when the party is devastated in the cities, the remnants of the party leadership and the advisors from the Soviet Union certainly called for a greater revolution. They urged communists in various parts of the country to launch insurrections to try to sort of jumpstart the revolution. Or it leads to a series of really disastrous uprisings. Mao himself is brought into one of these when he is ordered to lead a peasant army to capture a city in central China. They do so for a few days, but they're driven out by the better armed and better organized forces of the nationalist army. And it's after this that Mao retreats with the remnants of his present army to the mountains of southern Jiangsu province. And it's there, along with other local communist leaders and the remnants of a few others of these abortions or uprisings, that he begins to put together a new model for the Chinese communist this rural base area it becomes a sort of laboratory. In the early 1930s, Mao and the military leader, Zhou Enlai, who brought his political ally, these individuals worked together with several million peasants in southern China to create a communist experiment to carry out experiments in land reform, in reforming the Chinese family system, a variety of things which later on, after the Communist Party comes to power nationally, will be implemented in a fully developed way. But in the early 30s and 40s, they're just experimenting, they're trying things out in a sort of laboratory of. Well, Chiang Kai-shek went on after 1947 to complete the unification of China. He takes his forces on to the north, defeats or wins over the remaining forces, and establishes a reunified China, a stable national government, now based in Nanjing again, with Chiang Kai-shek as the leader, comes to be put in place. Even while he's completing the second half of the expedition, Chiang begins to have conflicts with the Japanese military in the Shandong province to protect their possession at Qingdao and some of the railway lines. There are Japanese military units and Chiang's forces in 1928. Later on, the Japanese blow up the train of one of World War allies because they want to eliminate him as a threat to their position in Korea. So tensions between Chiang Kai-shek and the Japanese, China and the Japanese, begin to show more clearly at the end of the 1920s and the 1930s. But Chiang Kai-shek determined that the real problem that we deal with, the real enemy that we face is not that, but the Chinese said famously that the Japanese skin when communists, for instance, of the drugs. So he's willing to ignore the activities of Japanese drug users and concentrate his efforts on fighting against communism. The base area in southern Johnson, which is only one number of these areas where local communist forces establish control, but it's probably the most significant. It's the focal point of John's activities in the early 1930s. And he launches a series of what are called circle campaigns, where he basically puts a blockade of military forces completely surrounding the communist base here, and then slowly but surely closing the range, closer and closer in. The first several of these efforts are defeated. The communists manage to fight back and drive off nationalist forces, but John keeps the pressure on. He begins in the 30s to get military advice from German, the Nazi party that had up the power in Germany in the early 30s. Begins to form a fairly close relationship with that will be suspended later when they become even more closely allied with the Japanese. But for a while in the 50s, German advisors are very helpful in leading the anti-communist campaigns in China. And eventually, by 1934, it becomes apparent that the latest concealment campaign of the nationalists against the Junction base area, which is sometimes called the Junction Soviet, is going to be successful. And the communist leaders have to decide what they're going to do, how they're going to cope with this threat. What they decide leads to one of the most dramatic events in 20th century Chinese history. An event which continues to inspire young Chinese even today. This is what's called the Long Book Fight. In October of 1834, communists decide that they're not going to be able to resist Russian activities that can be much longer. There is another case in Western centered on a small town called Vienna. And they decide that they're going to try to break out from the Guinness area and make their way to Vienna. This is a long, long way to go. And they don't know exactly how to get there or how they will survive in the process of doing so. Nonetheless, they figure this is their best option. So, in October, before 115,000 people break out from the trouble, a small contingent is left behind in the heartland of the Junkie base area to make a last stand to the national forces and also to keep those national forces occupied so that they won't be able to pursue the long march set out. Long march strikes off between the south and west, and in the course of the next year, they troop over several thousand kilometers. It's not a simple straight path off to the west that you take. They traverse several provinces across mountain ranges, swamps, deep river gorges, very dramatic. They're constantly being pursued and harassed by national forces. Of the 115,000 people are on the long march, 15,000 complete. 100,000 people are lost one way or another along the way. Early in the course of the political takes place, which is then mounted on, is a review of Congress, who assumes the position of chairman of the party, and he holds this position uninterruptedly until 1976. The triumph of Mao sets the stage for the latter Revolution. Once the Long March reaches Yan'an at the end of 1936, sorry, the end of 1935, the great age of what comes to be called the Yan'an era, or the Yan'an Basin, gets started. And in the Northwest, the communists have a new laboratory, a new arena to experiment with policy and organization. Later on, the Japanese invasion comes. Yan'an Basin will be the center of resistance against the Japanese invasion. And indeed, by the end of 1936, from their position in the Northwest, they're able to enter into a second united front with the Nationalists. We'll see the circumstances of that and how the war with Japan revolution which followed in our next lecture. At the end of 1935, Mao Zedong and the 15,000 survivors of the Long March arrived in northwestern China. They spent much of 1936 settling into their new circumstances in the Yan'an Basin. And at the end of that year, an opportunity arose for the establishment of a second united front between communists and the nationalists, with a focus at this point on resisting the Japanese. The occasion that allows the formation of the second united front is something that's called the Xi'an incident. Xi'an is the modern name for the ancient city that had been Shanghai in Chinese province. And at that time, in 1936, this part of China, the southern part of China province, was in the control of one of the military strongmen who was part of the nationalist coalition, or the nationalist alliance. This was a man named Zhang Shuiliang. Now, Zhang Shuiliang's father had been a warlord in northern China. He had been assassinated by the Japanese back in 1928. So Zhang Shuiliang was particularly anxious that China and the nationalists should take a strong stand against Japanese aggression. And he was very frustrated with what he perceived as Chiang Kai-shek's unwillingness to stand up to the Japanese. Chiang, as we noted before, saw the Japanese threat as secondary and the threat of the communists as primary. But Zhang saw it the other way around. He was anxious to encourage Chiang Kai-shek to take a stronger line of resisting the Japanese. The Xi'an incident, what happens in the Xi'an incident is that Chiang Kai-shek goes to Xi'an to visit Zhang Shuiliang. And during that visit, General Zhang effectively places Chiang Kai-shek under house arrest. He then invites representatives from the communist base area in northern China to come to Xi'an. The communists send Zhou Enlai, and he enters into negotiations, and an agreement is reached for the forming of a united front to resist the Japanese. And Kai-shek is released back to Nanjing, his capital, but he then places Zhang Shuiliang under arrest. And in fact, General Zhang remains under arrest by the nationalist forces right down until the end of the 1990s. He was taken to Taiwan by the nationalists in 1948, 49, and was held under house arrest there until just about 5 or 6 years ago. Nonetheless, in terms of the United Front, brought the communist and the nationalist forces together to strengthen China's ability to resist Japan. As it turned out, the timing on this was very significant. In 1931, Japan had invaded Manchuria and had occupied that part of China, had actually separated it from China and created a puppet state called Manchukuo, with the last of the Manchu emperors, we now as the ruler, puppet ruler of this supposedly independent country. invasion of China proper. There's a famous incident in July 1997, the so-called Marco Polo Bridge incident, takes place at a site to the southwest of Beijing, where Chinese and Japanese troops have a kind of confrontation. And from that, the war breaks out steadily through the rest of 1937. The Japanese, once they launched their invasion of China proper, pursue it quite vigorously, quite relentlessly, along two basic lines. They come into China from the north, crossing the Great Wall from their puppet state in Manchuria, and start to move south along basically along the railway lines moving from Beijing down to central China to the central Chinese city of Wuhan. So that's a north-south advance, which doesn't go very rapidly, but that's the line that they want to be following. And then the second front that they open up starts with the city of Shanghai. Shanghai was, as we mentioned before, an international city. There were British, French, Americans, Russians, and Japanese and others living in Shanghai, and many of the foreign countries that were represented there had their own troop concentration, their own military units there. In the fall of 1937, Japanese forces based in Shanghai attacked the Chinese part of the city, the western side of Shanghai, and then begin to fight their way west up the course of the Yangtze River. The Japanese plan that the group moving west up the Yangtze River and the group moving south down the railway from Beijing would meet at the central Chinese city of Wuhan. And they expected this to happen fairly quickly. The idea was to have a sort of almost a blitzkrieg, lightning sort of invasion. But that did not work out. In fact, both in North China and especially along the Yangtze River, the resistance that the Chinese put up was much more intense, much more fierce than the Japanese had anticipated. And in some ways, you should recall the experience that both the Mongols and the Manchus had in invading China, where the greatest resistance that they met was in the Jiangnan region. They were coming into the region from the north and west, whereas the Japanese were invading from the east and coming out of the city of Shanghai. But in either case, the Jiangnan region proved to be a very, very difficult area for a foreign conqueror to move. Nonetheless, the Japanese were able to eventually achieve their initial military objectives, and the nationalist government was forced to retreat first from the city of Nanjing, west of the river to Wuhan, and then eventually forced to abandon Wuhan and move on up to the Yangtze Gorge to the city of Chongqing in Sichuan, where they established their what proved to be their permanent wartime headquarters. Now, when the Japanese reached Nanjing, which had been the nationalist capital, it took them until December, the beginning of December of 1937, to actually get there. And when they did, again, sort of in the recollection and certainly resonance with the events of the nature conflict, the Japanese carried out in Nanjing a great massacre. They were very upset, they were very frustrated with the resistance that the Chinese had put up. And when they took the city of Nanjing, although the Chinese military had largely withdrawn, the Japanese unleashed a very serious campaign of terror against the civilian population of Nanjing. Hundreds of thousands of people were killed, men and women were raped. The incident comes to be known as the Rape of Nanjing, and is still today a source of very severe tensions sometimes between China and Japan. Atrocities that were perpetrated there and elsewhere in China. While they were certainly intended by the Japanese to terrorize and intimidate the Chinese, often had exactly the opposite effect, certainly of frightening people, but the opposite of the intended effect, which was to make the Chinese stiffen in their resistance, to make them even stronger in their hostility to the Japanese invasion. Well, particularly northern China. The war, after the first year or two, begins to settle into a more stable pattern. The nationalists were based in the west and the southwest. They had their political center at Chongqing, Sichuan province. They had another very important center down in Kunming in Yunnan. They also had troops still in various parts of the South China. The Japanese did not occupy all of South China by any means. And so there were pockets, there were areas where nationalist forces continued to operate long after the initial Japanese invasion. In the north, the Chinese communists, of course, had their base area in Shanxi province, around the town of Yan'an. And from there, the communists pursued a very vigorous campaign of guerrilla warfare all across North China. The idea that the Japanese were occupying all of North China was a little simplistic. They, during the daytime, could extend their presence over all the areas, but at night, for the areas right along the railway lines and the main towns, much of the countryside was in the hands of popular forces led by communist guerrillas. So there was lots of sabotage, lots of fighting with Japanese troops, blowing up of bridges, railway lines, and things like that, designed to harass and tie down large numbers of Japanese troops who could not be spared then for other kinds of military uses. This pattern then persisted for several years, with the Japanese occupying much of China, not really being able to push their conquest further, not being able to really gain complete functional control, even of the areas that they basically were dominated militarily. Their invasion of China, which theoretically was designed to help them solve their problems at home, their economic and population problems, and proper, it proved to be a very counterproductive activity. But once they had invaded, once they had occupied China, the Japanese really had, from their point of view, no choice but to try to stick things out and hope to eventually defeat their enemies and perhaps reap some benefits of victory down the way. That clearly was not the direction that the war took. And by 1944, it was pretty clear that Japan's defeat was inevitable. The war in the larger Pacific theater, the war with the United States, was one in which, after the first few months, it became evident Japan could not win, despite the dramatic victories that they achieved at the end of 1941, beginning of 1942. By the summer of 1944, the American counterattack was moving relentlessly towards Japan, and it became obvious that the USA would defeat Japanese imperialism, and that would radically transform the situation in China. In anticipation of eventual American victory, Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists pursued a relatively static strategy vis-a-vis the Japanese. They resisted Japanese attempts to acquire more territory, but they didn't really launch major offensives to try to drive the Japanese out of territory they had already occupied. Chiang Kai-shek received a lot of military assistance from the United States during the war and intended to restore that way to save it for the post-war period where he anticipated a big conflict with the Chinese. Frustration with this on the part of the Western allies, particularly the American military advisor, Joseph Stilwell, resulted in tensions and it's almost an open break between Stilwell and Chiang. Stilwell eventually had to be withdrawn by the American government. But Chiang stayed resolute in its view that even after Japan had invaded and occupied so much of China, that they were not the real problem, and the real enemy would be the Chinese Communist Party. As for themselves, the party, the Chinese Communists, saw the coming end of the war as setting the stage for a great revolutionary confrontation between their popular movement, their peasant-based movement, and the nationalist government. The anti-Japanese resistance, which communist guerrillas had spearheaded, particularly across northern China, had won them wide support. The communists were certainly perceived, at least, as having been the more active fighters in the resistance against Japan. And this helped to spread, along with some fairly modest programs of social reform that the communists pursued in their areas of their control. This led to a great deepening of popular support for the Red Army and for the Chinese Communist movement in general. Meanwhile, the communists were able to present an image of nationalist Chiang as corrupt, as patriotic, as incompetent. It is basically the agents of Western imperialist interests in China. So the split, the division between communists and the nationalists, even though there was theoretically this united front to resist the Japanese, the antagonism between parties certainly did not diminish, probably only intensified in the course of the war. When Japan surrendered in August, September of 1945, there was a period in China where efforts were made to try to negotiate some sort of post-war, perhaps coalition government. The United States sent negotiators 2 or 3 times to China to bring leaders of the nationalist and communist movements together. But while that was going on, there was a lot of maneuvering taking place on the ground. Russians had come into the war at the very last minute, in August 1945, just shortly before the atomic bombs were dropped on Japan. But in doing so, they had come into northeast China, into Manchuria, and occupied a lot of the territory that had formerly been in Japanese hands. They stripped a lot of the industrial plant from that area and took it back to the Soviet Union as war reparations. But they also passed some aid along to the Chinese Communist forces. The United States, at the same time, was turning over large amounts of Japanese arms that had been captured after the Japanese forces in China surrendered to the nationalists. So, although negotiations to try to find some sort of peaceful coalition were going on, both sides, both the communists and the nationalists, were also strengthening their positions militarily, preparing for a real serious confrontation. When these efforts to negotiate some sort of compromise solution broke down, it didn't take all that long. So, at the end of 1946, full-scale fighting really breaks out between the communists and the nationalists. Nationalists first drive the CCP out of their base area in the West, but that proves to be a relatively meaningless victory because it's in the North China Plain, heartland of peasant farmland, that the communists now have their greatest strength, and in Manchuria. So, northern China, Manchuria, and the North China Plain falls fairly quickly under the control of the communists. Southern China and southwest has to remain in the hands of the nationalists initially, and then a military confrontation between these two areas follows. In 1948, late in 1948, a great battle takes place called the Battle of the Huai. The Huai River runs through central China between the Yellow River to the north and the Yangtze River to the south. And on the plains surrounding the Huai River, great battle takes place, a great tank battle with a few really large conventional warfare groups, set piece battles that we have in the Chinese Revolution. And the communist forces emerge victorious. The nationalist military is deeply demoralized by this time. Communist propaganda is being increasingly effective in presenting the communists as wave of the future, the true nationalists, in some ways, the true patriots, and the corruption, the inflation that's taking place so under nationalist control is making the lives of ordinary China increasingly difficult. So it's not surprising that political support for the nationalists withdrawing forces to the island of Taiwan, which will become his last outpost. There are some large national forces spread across southern China, and most of those will eventually be withdrawn over to Taiwan. Some national forces in the far south and southwest wind up marching across the border into Burma, and their descendants remain there even today. The withdrawal to Taiwan is preceded late in 1940 by an uprising of the indigenous Taiwanese population. Who are not happy about the idea of their island being taken over by the nationalist forces from the mainland. But Chiang Kai-shek carries out nationalist forces carry out a fairly large-scale massacre of dissidents and resistors in Taiwan and pacify the island to prepare for the national law. The state of martial law, which is imposed on Taiwan at that point late in 1948, stays in effect for over 40 years. 1949 is a great year of transition. This is the year when nationalist forces are driven further south, isolated in various parts of the country, and either allowed to surrender or annihilated. And China's forces eventually begin their withdrawal from the streets of Taiwan to the offshore island. In April of 1949, Communist forces enter Beijing. The city had been besieged since the fall of 1948, but through careful negotiations, surrendered to the Communist forces without a major battle, a major destruction of the cultural heritage of the temple. And that's something that certainly Beijing people and others were very grateful for. Over the summer of 1949, as Communist forces advanced really everywhere across China, the leadership settled in Beijing and began to prepare their establishment of their government. And on October 1st of 1949, that new government in the People's Republic of China is proclaimed by Mao Zedong in a speech at Tiananmen, the Gate of Heavenly Peace, before the southern entry to the palace complex. And he, at that point, issues his very famous statement that the Chinese people have stood up. And the establishment of the People's Republic is portrayed certainly by the communist leadership as finally achieving the goals that had led to the overthrow of the imperial regime back in 1911, 1912, had been frustrated with the failure of the Republic initiative, had been threatened even more by the fragmentation of China and globalism, and then through the Japanese invasion and the Civil War with the nationalists. Finally, here in October of 1949, Mao was saying, this is over. Long period of warfare and division and oppression by foreigners and by reactionary forces in China is over. The People's Republic of China allows the Chinese people to take control. That's a very dramatic moment, a very dramatic speech by Mao. And not entirely out of line with the reality, which were that for the first time in a very long time, there was a single unified national government in China with a coherent and disciplined and basically honest, not corrupt institutional core in the Chinese Communist Party. And the communists were set upon a program which in their view would end China's weaknesses and would begin the process of building what they consistently and quite hopefully called New China. Now, the core of their program was land reform. And they had already begun the process of land reform even before the formal proclamation of the People's Republic. Indeed, we talked the other previous lecture about the Jiangxi Soviet back in the early 1930s, and how the communists had experimented with various social policies there. One of the things they had tried out there was how to go about land reform and how to redistribute land to make sure they didn't have some people who owned large estates, others who had no land at all, perhaps could only sell their labor as tenants or day workers. How could you achieve more equitable distribution of land as a still predominantly agricultural society? Land was the most productive resource. So land reform becomes the core of the program, and beginning in 1948 and continuing into the early 1950s. New regime, the Communist Party and the government of the People's Republic oversaw a fairly comprehensive program. First, in the areas in North China, which they had occupied and controlled pretty consistently since the end of the Second World War, and then extending this into the newly conquered areas, the newly controlled areas in South and Southwestern China. The process of land reform was a very complex one, and the communists were very careful not to simply impose a new structure, a new system on the vast population of China. And what they set out to do was to act almost as facilitators in the process. They would send work teams into villages, and they would seek out the people in the villages who had grievances, to see who was politically motivated, and they would work with them to identify who the landowners were and what the power relationships with that particular village were. And over a period of weeks or sometimes months, they would prepare for a moment when they would have mass meetings and assembled farmers rather than denounce the landlords and seize the estates or seize the titles to the land. Many landlords were beaten, many others were killed in this process. It was a violent transformation of the agricultural system of ownership. And it was a very traumatic event, in many instances a very brutal event, and yet it was the critical event to allow them to break with the economic realities which had begun to stagnate all the way back in the 18th century, really hadn't been transformed or hadn't been modernized in any significant way up to the middle of the 20th century. The land reform that was carried out by the communists, as we will see, doesn't really achieve the objectives of socialism and communism that they had intended, but it does create the material conditions for the establishment of new modes of production and eventually for the emergence of China as a dynamic and powerful growth economy at the end of the 20th century. We'll return to some of those languages in the next couple of chapters. Land reform was critical to eliminating political control of rural areas and to creating the conditions to reward for their vote and to creating the conditions for agricultural production. It was carried out in tandem with other reforms that were directed also at transforming the traditional rural fusion sort of popular culture. And the most critical step here was the passage of what's called the marriage law. Marriage law was meant to abolish certain traditional practices of principally arranged marriage. It allowed people to marry at their own will. It allowed divorce. It allowed both men and women to initiate divorce. And perhaps most significantly, when land reform was carried out under the terms of the marriage law, land as it was distributed was not simply given to the head of a household, which would be basically redistributed among men, but was given to both men and women, so that men and women, husband and wife, would each have their own economic resources and meant to empower them so that the legal empowerment of divorce and remarriage actually economic support. That's the substance to it. These were very radical reforms directed at transforming the core values, the core structures of the traditional system, and they were very effective in doing so. They didn't necessarily achieve the intended outcomes that the communists had, but they were critical to the ability of China to develop in the future. The Chinese established an alliance with the Soviet Union, which, as we'll see in the next lecture, was very important for economic development in the 1950s. Soviet advisors came to China, helping with economic development. The war in Korea between North and South threatened to bring American troops into China again, but massive Chinese intervention in 1950, while prolonging trading on the peninsula, did keep the Chinese homeland basically secure. By the end of 1950, the communists were certainly in firm control of all of China. They were embarking on their program of socialist construction, and we will follow the course of that construction through the first quarter century of communist rule in the next lecture. From 1949 to 1976, Rothschild was the leader of the new China. And this was a period in which many of the ideals and visions had for building modern socialist China went a long way towards being achieved. There was also a period during which there was conflict within the leadership of the new China over exactly how a modern industrialized society could be built. And these disputes eventually brought the party close to self-destruction. And by the time Mao died in 1976, China was poised on the brink of a further radical transformation. What I want to do in this lecture is to consider China under Mao, look at the high points of development along the course of his leadership, and see how this split between different groups within the leadership affected the ways in which China evolved and developed in this quarter century. Mau's vision of a new China was dominant rhetoric throughout this period. What Mao said, Mao's writings, his speeches, these were the public goals, these were the ideals that the Chinese Communist Party of China officially pursued. But almost from the beginning of the People's Republic, there were different groups within the leadership who interpreted the goals of socialism and building a modern industrial society in different ways. We saw different roads, different paths, if you will, that could be followed in pursuit of these objectives. Debates were generally kept within the leadership of the party. The party sought to present as long as possible a unified public base. But we know now, particularly in retrospect, that many of these debates became quite acrimonious, and on occasion they broke out into more public forms of conflict. Mao was generally able to prevail, at least in terms of keeping the party line, stated positions of the import of his views. But from time to time, he was forced to compromise, sometimes to give up some of his control over various aspects of the government, and he never really was able to have kind of absolute power over all aspects of development, all aspects of the program of the party or the government, which he probably would have wished, and which would have allowed him perhaps to pursue his particular vision more successfully. In the 1950s, the principal area between different groups of the party had to do with agricultural policy. China at this time was still overwhelmingly an agricultural nation. The agricultural sector within the economy was far the largest, and nearly 80% of the Chinese people still live on land and still involved in farming. So, how to deal with the agricultural sector was a critical question. Land reform, talked about in the last lecture, was carried out across the country, but it was very effective getting land into the hands of farming families so that basically all the peasants, all the farmers across China had some land. Everybody wound up with something. They had individual titles to this land. They could cultivate it themselves. And the great estates, the great landlords, are largely done away with, either given smaller plots of land to farm themselves, or in many instances driven off the land, somebody was killed, and a completely new setup in the countryside seems to be taking shape. But the goal of land reform and the goal of the communist movement was not simply to restrict it to small-scale peasant farmers and have them then go on to a system of small-scale private property, but was instead to build up a collective system, a system of collective or cooperative farming. We put along various kinds of economic reforms to take place, and which would allow for economies of scale to be developed and would increase the productivity of the land. So in the early and mid-50s, incremental steps were taken towards agricultural collectivization. It's a very long and elaborate process. We'll go through all the individual steps of it, but essentially from a widespread body of individual farmers to small-scale cooperative units, to larger-scale cooperatives, and then eventually to even larger-scale collective units. This was a sort of year-by-year process of development. And up until about 1956 or 1957, each stage in this process seemed to be very effective. There was very little popular resistance or resentment to this, largely because the kinds of reforms that were being carried out, the introduction of some small-scale mechanization, the introduction of better knowledge about techniques of cultivation, use of fertilizers, cooperation between working groups, the ability to share instruments of production, whether it was livestock or farm tools of one kind or another. All these factors combine to result in increasing yields. And if you look at the statistics on production, grain production in China during year to year, they go steadily up. And indeed, grain production increases at a rate faster than population growth, which itself is taking place significantly during the year. And then it means that the available food supply per capita was also increasing. So the reforms that were carried out in the early 50s were very effective and were very successful, and therefore were well received. By about 1957, Mao becomes convinced that it's possible, building on these initial successes, to accelerate the timeline to shorten the amount of time needed to achieve complete collectivization. And he begins to announce that moving to the highest level, moving to what comes to be called people's communes, very, very large collective entities, that was the time. So that communes are a good thing. And a movement effectively sweeps across the country to leap up to these highest level cooperatives, collectives, and to then launch what comes to be called a Great Leap Forward. And the Great Leap Forward is, in some ways, the logical culmination of Mao's vision of unleashing the productive capacity and trained peasantry, of moving to economies of scale, great large-scale cooperative labor projects, build water reservoirs and irrigation systems and all this kind of thing. The Great Leap achieves many very positive objectives, but it runs into even more powerful negative forces. The core problem that develops with the Great Leap Forward is linked in many ways to Mao's idea of how to motivate people, how to get the vast masses of China to work together and achieve almost by an act of will a process of development. Enthusiasm is basic in this process, and enthusiasm for success is such that people begin to falsify their reports of success. Not in a gross way, not in an excessive way, but if you add a few percentage points at the bottom level of reporting, and the person at the next level adds a few percentage points, and the person at the next level adds a few percentage points, by the time you get up to the national level where the state council, the state planning bureau is formulating its information, its plan for the future, you have gross distortions in what's going on. That's exactly what happens. 1957, 1958, 1959. Initially, the Great Leap Forward itself is a huge success. Crop production increases. The problem is it doesn't increase in reality as much as it increases on paper. It does gain, but it doesn't gain as much. Based on false figures, based on misunderstood realities of the countryside, planners decide so much has been achieved, they can lift various immigration restrictions, they can allow people to basically consume what they want. This results in a lot of grain, a lot of livestock, a lot of food resources of one kind and another, not making their way into the supply system for the states, but at the same time trying to build up industry and raise the standard of living of the urban population. And instead, there's initially a sort of glut in the countryside. As a result, and then as a result of excessively high targets set for next year, there begins to be a crisis in agricultural production. There's not enough food which they thought was going to be there as a reserve has been consumed. As we move into 1959, the situation begins to be much worse. Bad weather sets in, a variety of other circumstances that begin to contribute to problems in the countryside. And by early 1959, food shortages become characteristic. There's a lot of debate, a lot of dispute in academia about the extent of the hunger, the extent of starvation that follows. You'll see figures ranging up to 20 million people dying as a result of the food crisis during the Great Leap Forward. It's hard to know exactly what the precise figure should be, but certainly, no matter how you look at it, it's a period of hardship. It's a period of widespread malnutrition, and certainly of significant deaths resulting from shortfalls of the Great Leap Forward. The crisis that the Great Leap Forward results in the first real serious split, the first real serious division between elements within the party leadership. There had been campaigns carried out in the course of the 50s directed against what people will call rightists or anti-party elements. These were largely directed against intellectuals who would criticize the party for being overly bureaucratic. And this begins to point up what will prove to be a very serious problem in the long term, which is that it goes from being, prior to 1949, a fighting revolutionary organization to a government bureaucracy, an administrative elite managing the affairs of the country, and with the capacity to draw to itself a lot of the material rewards and benefits that are being made available by economic growth and development. The bureaucratic alienation of the party from ordinary people, from people which it supposedly is there to serve, starts to be more and more of a problem. And the false reporting of figures during the Great Leap is in one way an example of this, that the bureaucrats wanted to make themselves look good. They wanted to have the best sounding reports. But they weren't really cognizant of how this would have such an adverse impact on the actual lives of the people that they manage. Well, needless to say, the food shortfalls that are occurring by the spring of 1959 lead some members of the leadership to be very critical of the policies of the Great Leap Forward. In August of 1959, a party conference takes place, and at that conference, in a place called Lushon, The defense minister at that time, a man named Rabbi, circulates a letter amongst the party leadership, very critical of Mao's approach, critical of Mao's model of mass mobilization and modernization based on the agricultural sector, building up the enthusiasm of the peasantry. Mao learned this letter and launches a counterattack against Peng Dekai and eventually confronts the party leadership with a choice. If they support Peng Dekai, he will resign, he says, and go back to the countryside and he will do that revolution. Or Peng Dekai is forced to resign as Minister of Defense. He goes into sort of forced retirement for a few years, although eventually he's brought back to a more active role. But Mao, although he is vindicated, although his leadership is sustained, nonetheless is forced to step back, is forced to resign from the position of president of the People's Republic and to retreat to a sort of second stage level in terms of state affairs. He remains chairman of the party, but of course wields tremendous power from that discussion. But it does represent a sort of a political compromise that inhibits Mao's ability to manage the operations of the state machinery on a day-to-day basis. From 1959 until 1962, that state machinery comes to be controlled more by a group within the party leadership, sometimes referred to as the pragmatists, and led by Deng Xiaoping and the president that replaces Mao as president, These emphasize the achievement of economic objectives, which were more based on sort of realistic effect, and not on the primacy of politics. My view was that politics should be commanded more dramatically to line that economic factors, economic calculations should be given more significant role. He moved away from Mao's emphasis on the highest levels of collectivization. The people's communes were largely assembled and broken back down to a much smaller scale, although still collective farming communities. And there was a general realization in the party's oversight over life both in the countryside and in the city. By 1962, I began to feel a certain frustration with all this and with the way things were going. He wanted to make another effort to remind people of the necessity to keep socialism and political revolution in mind, as well as the efforts to achieve economic development. And he advocated organizing something called the Socialist Education Campaign. The idea of the Socialist Education Campaign was not to educate people in socialism, but to remind the leadership of how building socialism was in the interest of the masses of the Chinese. And the idea was that party leaders would go down into the villages and would have some direct experience of what life in the countryside, life out in the fields of agricultural production was really like. Also in factories and cities. But senior and even mid-level party leaders didn't really want to do this. They didn't really want to give up their privileges and comforts of their bureaucratic lifestyle. And so, once again, the Socialist Education Campaign winds up being turned into another anti-racist campaign. All the old usual suspects, the intellectuals, are once again tried out, criticized, abused for their supposedly anti-party or counter-revolutionary sentiments. Well, Mao found this to be extremely frustrating. He had meant to reform and reinvigorate the party leadership, and instead, the party leadership had taken this as an occasion to sort of further alienate themselves from elements within the larger population. In 1965, Mao's frustration reaches a peak. That at that point he has trouble getting the things that he's written published in the newspaper of the Communist Party. The newspaper is just almost unthinkable. He leaves the capital, goes down to Shanghai, where there's a group of supporters that share his views and his thinking, and he prepared to launch what comes to be called the Great Proletarian Cultural Revolution. This gets fully underway in the spring of 1966, and over the next 2 or 3 years, it engulfs China in a tremendous public drama and public trauma. What Mao does in the Cultural Revolution essentially is to call upon the broad masses to criticize the party. Okay? He says that it is important. He talks about attacking the headquarters. He says that it is right to struggle against reactionaries, and by reactionaries he means people in the party who are reactionaries. He talks about opposing those in the party taking what he calls the capitalist road, whose policies will result not in socialism, but in China returning to the capitalist way. By calling on the masses, the vast numbers of the Chinese people to attack the party, Mao unleashes some very powerful forces. And we see late in 1966 and into the first half of 1967 some very radical activity. The workers in great cities, most particularly the city of Shanghai, the most industrialized city in China, the greatest port in China, where workers live and work. But other big industrial cities as well. Large-scale mass organizations of workers are formed. Street demonstrations demanding various kinds of reforms take place. In some ways, what Mao unleashes, the kinds of popular movements that spring up, particularly in places like Shanghai, are almost anticipatory of things like the Solidarity of Poland a decade or so later. In Shanghai, in the winter of 1966 to 67, this actually reaches the point where these popular workers' organizations set aside the leadership of the Communist Party. The Communist Party Committee of Shanghai, the municipal party organization, is dissolved, and something called the Shanghai Commune is put in place in February 1967. But it doesn't last very long. And in many ways, this is really the turning point in the cultural revolution. It goes on for a while afterwards, but these events become very important because what Mao decides is that you do need to have a Communist Party. He orders the radical groups in Shanghai to restore the party, to dissolve their popular government, their so-called Shanghai Commune. And once he does this, the real question becomes not a matter of the broad masses somehow reforming the party, but who's going to control the party from within. And the Cultural Revolution, from that point on, largely becomes a conflict over party control. This process culminates in April 1969 at the 9th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party. At that point, it's pretty clear that Mao and his followers have achieved sufficient control within the party. And although the official cultural revolution indeed continues all the way down until Mao's death in 1976, practically speaking, the active political phase of the cultural revolution comes to an end in the spring of 1969. The final 7 years of Mao's life were characterized by sort of functional stalemate within the party leadership. Mao, particularly a quartet of radical leaders called the Gang of Four, with Mao's wife, Jiang Qing, as their principal leader, they take the control of much of the party's propaganda, education, and cultural institutions. But other allies of Mao, supposed successors to Mao, most notably Deng Xiao, who was supposed to be the man who would take over from Mao, his death, winds up being denounced as a traitor and dies in a plane crash trying to flee China after supposedly having plotted to assassinate him. So the Mao side of the conflict in the party is, to some extent, in disarray. The pragmatists, on the other hand, find themselves staging something of a comeback. Liu Shaoqi, the leader of this group originally, dies in 1969. But Deng Xiaoping, who was sort of his second in command, having heard not just once, but several times, makes a return to power, particularly after 1972, and is in fact put in charge of the science and technology policy for China. Through the early 70s, it appears that Mao is sort of balancing off the radicals like for against the pragmatists like Deng Xiaoping. Having decided to retain the central role of the Chinese Communist Party, he now is stuck with this sort of situation of not really being able to resolve conflicts within the party. And this makes the last phase of Mao's leadership really a tragic and rather pathetic period. 1976 proves to be the critical year. It is the year in which Mao himself will die. That is in some ways only the end of a series of quite dramatic events. In January, Zhou Enlai was perhaps the most popular leader amongst the communist subcommittees. He had been prime minister since the establishment of the People's Republic back in 1949. Zhou Enlai dies. His death is widely mourned. And in April of 1976, people in Beijing go to Tiananmen Square and put flowers and other kinds of memorials at the monument to people's heroes. Well, this is interpreted by, again, full radical wing of the party as a criticism of them. Zhou Enlai had always been very, very close to Mao, but he had never really endorsed or supported the more radical activities of the beginning before. And they saw him as, in fact, having been their adversary. So when popular support, popular admiration for Zhou was expressed, they interpreted this as a popular attack on them. And there's quite a confrontation in April of 76, and riots break out. Some police cars are overturned and burned. Troops have to be sent in to sort of quiet the situation down. It doesn't get out of control anywhere near things through 1989, but it does represent a more serious public expression of opposition to the existing leadership that has been seen in China for a while. In July 1976, a major earthquake centered at a place called Tangshan, northeast of Beijing, kills nearly 300,000 people and causes widespread damage in China, including in Beijing itself. Now, an earthquake like this, the traditional cosmological worldview of imperial China, and still in popular practices, an earthquake like this was involved in a portion of very serious, very negative, impending events. Shortly after the Tangshan earthquake, Zhu De, who had been the founder of the Red Army, dies also. And then finally, on September 9th, Mao Zedong himself dies. So, 1976 is a year in which three of the founding leaders of the communist movement pass from the scene, in which a series of public demonstrations against the existing leadership takes place in the heart of Beijing, and in which an earthquake frightens not only the people but the leadership as well. Almost immediately after Mao's death, his leadership and to preside over a fairly complete reorientation of the Chinese Communist Party and China's course of development in the modern world. In our final lecture, we will turn to the situation of China after Mao, to China at the beginning of the century, and we will see where China stands as we move into the future. With the death of Mao Zedong in September of 1976, China reaches yet another period. This one resulting within 2 years in the return of Deng Xiaoping, now as the supreme leader of China, the triumph of the pragmatism wing within the Communist Party, and the launching of China on a new road of modernization and development. The socialist path that had been followed under Mao's leadership comes to be largely abandoned, and China places itself, ironically, as Mao had predicted, on the capitalist road, and has achieved since that time tremendous growth and development, which now, in the 21st century, positions China to once again resume leading role economically, politically, in the world future. Events moved very quickly after Mao's death. In October 1976, just a month after Mao had passed on, a coalition of conservative party leaders, military leaders came together to isolate and remove Mao's radical followers. Mao's designated successor, named who was from Mao's home province of Hunan, had a relatively undistinguished career in public services, but had been named by Mao as his successor. Wang Guofeng holds on to office for a while after Mao's death, but there's nothing really to distinguish him. He doesn't have a particular vision. And really, during this period of what the work process of bringing Deng Xiaoping back into the leadership, military leaders, technocrats, and state planning apparatus were among those who showed support. And in November of 1978, a party gathering names Deng Xiaoping as vice premier and assures his control over policy. Deng then sets about, carefully, not in an excessive pace, but nonetheless quite clearly and relentlessly, to reorient China's policies towards higher development strategy. The technical expertise of planners, of managers, of party leaders is emphasized over their political characterization. He begins to pursue the dismantling of collective ownership, particularly in agriculture. He adopts measures for family planning, and planning has been quite a contentious issue. Well, more workers, more babies, more workers, and more workers, more communists, and so family planning was a bad idea. Deng Xiaoping now institute population control efforts, recognizing that a continued rapid expansion of China's population would eat up whatever benefits economic development might create. He begins to expand opportunities for economic activity in the private sector. Perhaps most significantly, Deng Xiaoping puts into high gear policies which in some ways had already begun. Mao had welcomed President Nixon to China back in 1972 and had begun the process of allowing China to open more to the outside world. Deng Xiaoping now puts this higher on his list of priorities and accelerates the pace of China's opening to the outside world. particular, he begins to welcome direct foreign investment in the Chinese economy. At first, in very careful, controlled ways, but as time goes by, an increasingly open embrace of global economy. As foreign capital begins to come into China, the economy starts to expand really quite rapidly. At first, special economic zones are created, and in a way, echoing all the way back to Qing policy. Special economic zones, when they first start to be set up, are created far away in the south, from the political center in Beijing down. Two of the earliest special economic zones are created just outside of Hong Kong. So back in the far south, where the old Canton system had been centered, now we have the first of the special economic zones. But as their success becomes evident, they are established elsewhere, and eventually all of China becomes a special economic zone with foreign investment and foreign economic activity playing an increasing role in China's growth and development. Domestically, market reforms begin to be introduced both in agriculture and in industry. In agriculture, experiments with breaking up agricultural collectives, but not granting formal legal title to land, but giving farming households very long-term leases. Initially, 15 or 20 years. Eventually, these start to be 99-year leases. In effect, creating a system of private property in the countryside. These are developed in conjunction with what's called the contract system, under which agricultural households will enter into an agreement with government purchasing units to supply a certain amount of grain or vegetables or whatever agricultural commodities are involved. And whatever surplus they have beyond that contract with the state, they can sell on the private market. This rapidly leads to expansion of agricultural production and the flourishing of the private sector in the agricultural economy. Private industrial enterprises also begin to grow. And when I characterize these as private, that's perhaps an overstatement. They are not public, state sector enterprises, but many of them are in practice only semi-private to begin with. They are enterprises that are started not by the Ministry of Machine Building or the Ministry of the Electronics Industry or something like that, but by local level collective or cooperative units. Sometimes these are township governments, sometimes these may be county governments, sometimes they are public and private partnerships, but they are new forms of organization, new forms of economic institutions, and they become very, very dynamic. Growth in this private and semi-private component of the economy rapidly outstrips what's taking place in the public sector, and these become the most dynamic enterprises in China. Nonetheless, problems go along with this. Because of the heritage of it, because of the central role of the Chinese Communist Party, the process of transforming the economy, both institutionally and in terms of the actual allocation of resources, is one that comes to be distorted by the role of the party, and to some extent in the state machinery, but the party is perhaps more important here. Because to operate a private venture or to operate one of these mixed public-private enterprises, different kinds of permits or licenses that need to be acquired. To get permission for those, the party secretary or the party officer of a particular government unit has to approve. And so opportunities for corruption, for bribery, for getting shares of equity, perhaps, in a new company as a sort of favor for the people in the party who have to grant approval, these become characteristic. And corruption becomes a significant component of the economic growth and development that takes place. And as we'll see shortly, concern about this, frustration, this resentment about this becomes a very significant political issue. The other consequences of economic growth and modernization that begin to manifest themselves as we move through the 1980s. Some parts of the economy, private enterprises, public-private partnership, joint ventures between Chinese enterprises and foreign industries begin to grow and flourish. Incomes rise, wealth is being created, a more prosperous middle class begins to emerge. But other sectors of the economy don't benefit or don't benefit as much as these. For example, in the state sector, on the one hand, you have the massive industrial enterprises, steel mills, automobile factories, the railway system. These remain under state control. They're not very profitable in a sort of classic economic sense, and yet their position in the Chinese economy and social system are vital because they employ tens of millions, probably hundreds of millions of workers, and they provide a whole network of social services, education services, health services, which would otherwise have to be picked up by the government itself. So the reform of the sector becomes a serious problem, a set of contradictions, a set of tensions going in different directions. Some of the state enterprises manage to adapt themselves to become more profitable, more rationalized, in the economic sense, and remain competitive. Others tend to stagnate and just sort of operate on a business as usual basis. But even there, the government is able to put some additional investment in and raise standards of living, raise income levels, not perhaps keeping up entirely with the private and semi-private sectors, but at least not falling too far behind. Other areas of public employment, most particularly things like education, the healthcare service, wages don't rise, working conditions don't improve, housing conditions don't improve, and teachers, professors of various grades begin to feel left out, begin to feel that they're being left behind as China moves forward with its economic development. And they are particularly resentful when they see members of the party, and often the sons and daughters of party leaders, benefiting disproportionately, not from the hard work that they're putting in, but simply from taking advantage of their position in these privileged institutions. This kind of public perception of growing inequities and corruption becomes more and more a source of social tension as we move through the 1980s. In 1989, this reaches a serious crisis point, and we see a very public challenge in the continued authority leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, all through the years, particularly from 1986 on, there have been small-scale, localized demonstrations of protest, frustration. Some of these were in the form of anti-Japanese protests, the hostility between China and Japan, lingering legacy of events like the Rape of Nanjing, are still part of popular consciousness in China, even among young people today. And the opening of China to the outside world, the influx of outside investment, well, some of that was coming from Japan. The Japanese became a sort of convenient target. Frustration with economic change, frustration with corruption within the Chinese system could be vented in the form of anti-Japanese liberal actions. And those took place a number of times in the mid-1980s. Other demonstrations, other protest movements criticized the party leadership more directly. Some outspoken intellectual figures came to be quite prominent in their critique, challenging of the party leadership. At the same time, within the party, there were individuals who began to emerge as more sympathetic to these protests, and a reform or perhaps a more rapid reform begins to be discernible within the party leadership. Debates are now a little bit more public, a little more easy to observe than they had been back in the 1950s or 60s. And we know that individuals such as Hui Yaobang or Zhao Ziyang came to be advocates of more rapid reform, more liberalization, more opportunities for the participation of ordinary people in the political process. Hui Yaobang had become very popular in this role and who had in fact been disciplined to some extent by the party leadership for being maybe a little too outspoken, dies in April of 1989. His death, echoing back to the death of Zhou Enlai in 1976 and the popular demonstrations which had followed it. Hui Yaobang's death becomes the spark, the starting point for the student protests and the mass demonstration in Beijing in the spring of 1989. A number of factors come together at this time to make this such a dynamic and potentially explosive situation. Hui Yaobang's death leads to the outpouring of public sentiment in support of him in favor of more reform, more liberalization. Almost at the same time, just a matter of a week or two later, the Russian reformist leader Gorbachev was making a visit to China. And Chinese leadership was very proud of this, to have the Russian leader coming to China. This was seen in some ways as a recognition of China's success, of the status that China was achieving. And the Chinese leadership was very proud of this. When Gorbachev arrives, Tiananmen Square is occupied by student demonstrators, and it's impossible to bring Gorbachev to the big ceremonial welcome. The great hall of people. This is a humiliation, an embarrassment for the party leadership, and this begins to turn them against whatever sympathies they might have had for the student demonstration. The leadership still remains divided. The Greens take place within the very top levels of the party. How to respond? Should they impose martial law? Some articles are published in the paper denouncing the student demonstrators as anti-revolutionary. Other forces within the leadership want to have a more sympathetic line towards the students. The Western Union gets involved, of course, and outside reporters start to talk about this as threatening overthrow, threatening the collapse of the government, threatening the end of the rule of the Chinese Communist Party. Of course, from the point of view of the Western media, this was a desirable outcome, but for the communist leadership to be hearing this on the world news only made them more determined to hold on to their to the existing status. Ultimately, that's who resolved this conflict. He decided, in some ways, reminiscent of Mao's decision to maintain the leadership of the party during the Cultural Revolution. Doug decides that the demonstrations have to be suppressed and that force will be used as needed to do so. And that decision is critical to his view of how China is to go forward. Deng Xiaoping was a believer in pragmatism and the leadership of experts and technicians. He wasn't necessarily a great advocate of popular participatory democracy. And we can see that in this instance, his fear of unrest, his fear of instability and potential chaos far outweighed his desire to have popular support for reform. He wanted to modernize China, he wanted to make China a wealthy and powerful country, but didn't necessarily want to allow that process to be guided by forces outside of the Chinese Communist Party. Well, on June 4th, 1989, forces of the People's Liberation Army move into Beijing. There are very dramatic, violent confrontations between people in the streets of the city and these military forces coming in from the east and west. Certainly hundreds of people are killed in the fighting that night, and eventually the troops reach Tiananmen Square. A negotiated agreement is reached to get the last of the students holding out in the square to leave once they do. Many of them are pursued and arrested in later days, or many of them also managed to escape and to the west. Martial law is in Beijing, and this challenge, this movement to confront the government, to repudiate the corruption, inequities that are emerging in the course of economic reform, and the call for greater popular participation is brought to an end. In 1989, summer of 1989, many people looked at China and thought that they were in a very, very serious crisis, that the leadership of the Communist Party had been permanently undermined, that China's ability to continue to attract foreign investment, thereby continue to pursue its course of economic development, was going to seriously curtail, and that the future looked rather bleak, both for the Chinese Communist leadership and for the people of China. In the years since 1989, the actual experience has proved to be rather different. The Chinese Communist Party has managed to maintain its leadership and, to a significant extent, to maintain its legitimacy. It's still accepted, perhaps not overwhelmingly loved and admired, but certainly respected by the vast majority of the Chinese people. The foundation for this is really very straightforward. It is the capacity of the Chinese leadership to deliver steadily improving material standards of living and steadily increasing degrees of individual freedom to the Chinese people. China today is perhaps the most rapidly developing country in the world. Certainly, of any countries of any significant size, is the most rapidly developed country in the world. Chinese economy continues to grow at an exceptionally fast rate. Average growth over the years, over the last 20 or 25 years or so, has been over 7%. This year's growth rate is anticipated to be over 9%. The leadership recently announced that they were going to try to pull things off next year in the future by reducing growth to only 7%. Most countries would be delighted to have 7% growth, and the idea that this represents a conservative turn for China only indicates how rapid their overall development has been. The economic growth of China has lifted the material standards of living for hundreds of millions. Between 1990 and 2001, almost 300 million Chinese had their incomes rise enough to place them below the United Nations poverty line. There are still over 100 million Chinese living below the United Nations poverty line, but no country in history has ever lifted so many people out of poverty in so short a time. So these achievements of growth, of development are truly phenomenal. Most recently, perhaps, the dynamism of China's ability to become a modern country has been demonstrated by the launching of the outer space. The first orbital flight by a Chinese astronaut on a Chinese space vehicle. This technological was, of course, wildly welcomed in China and is seen by the Chinese as a demonstration of their return to prosperity, to stability, and to a place of significance in the world. These achievements, however, have not come without considerable cost. The problems that were often associated with the old China, certainly with the China of the middle years of the 20th century, problems of healthcare, problems of disease, problems of crime, problems of drug addiction, problems relating to the status of women. Many of these issues, which had gone away to a considerable extent during the 1950s and 1960s and 1970s, are now with us once again. A function, certainly at least a byproduct of the economic reform programs that have determined tremendous growth. It also meant that social services have deteriorated. The educational sector has gone from one in which the goal was universal public education and expanding higher education for high school graduates, which was far from achieving its objectives, but was moving steadily in that direction, to one in which the public educational sector has stagnated. Funding for schools is grossly inadequate. Teacher salaries have not risen anywhere near parity with the rest of the economy. And this has become so much a problem in China that in the cities, wealthy families, of which there is a largely rapidly growing supply, are sending their children to private schools. So a two-tier system of education, a publicly funded but not very adequately funded system of schools on one hand, and a private school system where the children of the new middle class, the well-off urban sector, can achieve a very good education. So moving away from the egalitarian ideals of socialism in China to a system much more similar to the capitalist economies of the Western world. Healthcare has gone in quite complicated directions. One of the great achievements of the Global Revolution was the system of barefoot doctors, people who weren't highly sophisticated, very highly trained or educated medical practitioners, but who had basic skills in disease prevention and sort of popular health services, who would go anywhere in the country, who often lived out in the countryside, who practiced in poorest villages. This was, again, an ideal which was not necessarily fully realized, but which was the dominant mode of investment and development under the socialist regime. The healthcare system has become, again, much more like the Western healthcare system. Hospitals are expensive places to go. Health insurance is in short supply. Hospitals increasingly invest in high-tech medical equipment, which makes their costs, service costs much higher. And health has become something which is now available. Great deal of differential based upon incomes. So economic growth has also resulted in economic inequality, and that has resulted in deterioration of services and many people. The situation for women is one which has been very problematic. The marriage law of 1950 was a very strong effort to equalize the status of men and women in Chinese society, to provide women with the kinds of economic resources necessary to ensure that their status was substantive and not merely punitive. In the era of economic reform, the status of women has, I think, deteriorated quite significantly. When factories have been rationalized, the employees laid off first, then it became women. The idea of women remaining at home, taking care of domestic tasks without, of course, being paid, has become the norm again. Certainly in urban China, the educational opportunities for women have declined, particularly in the private sector. So not to say that there are not women being educated, but the extent to which this is an egalitarian system has declined significantly. In the countryside, practices of arranged marriages, kidnapping women on a marriage, matrimonial agents, bride prices, dowries, many of the abuses associated with the old society have also returned. We're now on the threshold of the 21st century. We begin to use a period where China's growth almost certainly will continue. There will be problems, there will be challenges which China will face, but it seems highly likely that as the century progresses, China will return position of power, prestige, or leadership, which it traditionally occupied. In many ways, the last 2 centuries, since the end of the 18th century, have been an anomaly. As we've looked over the long sweep of Chinese history, seeing that there have been periods of growth and dynamism, and periods of decline and fragmentation. I think in the long term, historians of the future will look back on the 20th century as an era of fragmentation, and on the 21st as a period when China returned to its former self.
I have watched this fucking Chinese history podcast. It's 35 or 50 fucking hours. I have watched this motherfucking film 4 straight times. I'm gonna watch it again. It is so fucking good. When he's done with it, I would have fucking like I'm running out of the tunnel here. This is phenomenal. This thing is so fucking good. Content and associate professor of history at New Mexico State University, and the lectures on periods of Chinese history, before we begin to deal with the actual complex, I want to take a few moments to suggest some of the general themes that we're going to be engaging with as we go through these lectures. We'll be concerned with how the Chinese organize their society and government. We'll be concerned with how social elites, ruling groups, flourish at different times. What the bases for their power has been, or how they sustain and supported themselves, and how they made their rule acceptable to people. We'll be talking about how the Chinese have fought their own society, how they see the world around them. We'll consider the relationship between China and the outside world. First of all, Chinese civilization itself, how it emerged with the relationship China as a civilization, as a culture, and the people surrounding it, often seen by the Chinese barbarian. We'll be talking about how China has evolved from a regional system, global economy of the time. And in later lectures, we'll look at how influences into China from the outside have affected the development of Chinese history and interaction with China's interaction that large Western. We'll explore the connections between economic and social life. There's an art, literature, philosophy, cultural life in China linked in ways that are sometimes very different from how we normally think of things in the West. You'll usually have the situation in which we have the color results from the present. Chinese history, Chinese culture, historical tradition, poets, painters, and artists were often also the high political officials of a particular time. So if you look at some of the things that was good. And then investigate the question of whether developments in China, the development of Chinese history, parallels the history of other parts of the world, or whether it's responsible. We'll see in some instances there are connections, parallels between what developed in China and other ways that China carried its so something it seems that China has quite different from that. But in other ways, we can approach the history of China as a set of alternative responses, alternative cultures in response to common problems that people anywhere in history face. Well, in embarking on our exploration of
establishing just where and what is and what. China is located in East Asia, defined by several significant geographic features. The east of China is the Pacific Ocean, has a long coast of the Pacific, fairly all the north to the south. In the south, beyond areas held by China, Southeast Asia, Vietnam, Burma, Thailand. The heartland of China is found on the west by high mountains, the plateau, Burma, and also further north by the vast inner expanses of Asia. China are the grasslands of Mongolia and a little bit of the northeast forests of what today we call Manchuria. That's what surrounds China. That's what sort of defines China as what China is. What we refer to historically as the China continent is the area where the Chinese people, hundreds of millions today, have always lived. This area, think of as containing four circles. The north is the North China Plain. The North China Plain is a fairly vast expanse, flat on the farmland, relatively easy